Welcome to our first year anniversary episode of the eCommerce Made Easy podcast. May 2nd, 2024 marked our first anniversary of the eCommerce Made Easy podcast. Over the past 12 months, we've explored the ins and outs of the e-commerce world, but none of this would have been possible without the support of someone very special, my accountability partner and fellow podcaster, Melissa Ann Kitchen, who I now call my friend as well as my business bestie. Today, I'm thrilled to have her join us as we talk about our journey together. We'll talk about how we started podcasting, the challenges we faced, and how we've had each other's backs along each step of the way. And this is greatly important to business because without somebody walking alongside you, feeling all the feelings you feel, it's much harder to be a business owner and an entrepreneur. So I hope you join us as you explore what it might be like to have an accountability partner for you as well. Welcome to the eCommerce Made Easy podcast. I'm your host, Carrie Saunders. When we started this business, all I had was a couch, a laptop, and a 9-month-old. My main goal? To help others. Now, with over 20 years in the e-commerce building industry and even more than that in web development, I have seen a lot. I love breaking down the hard tech into easily understandable bits to help others be successful in their online business. Whether you're a seasoned e-commerce veteran or just starting out, you've come to the right place. So sit back, relax, and let's dive into the world of e-commerce together. Welcome back to this week's special episode of the eCommerce Made Easy podcast. 1 year and 53 episodes later, this is number 53 right here, we are celebrating with a very special person whom I now call my friend, Melissa Ann Kitchen. In this celebration episode, we'll be discussing all the behind the scenes details on when and why we both wanted to start a podcast, the benefits of having each other as accountability partners, and how that can help your business too. A time we helped each other out through a rough spot, and when we realized we were becoming true friends and supporting each other in life as well as in business, as well as how we bring our podcast and relationships into the future. Now, if you are noticing that I'm in a bit of a different place and I may not be quite sounding like myself, shortly after we recorded this interview of each other, I completely busted my toe really badly. So I am trying to do my best to do this intro and outro for you to add to this episode because I really want this to air on the right date, which is this week, May 7th, which will be close to our actual anniversary episode since, obviously the days shift on the year. So before we get started though, I want to tell you a little bit about Melissa, and I'm going to read her bio next. So Melissa Ann Kitchen, here's all about her. After losing her parents at a young age, preserving her family history and ties to the past became even more important to Melissa. She struggled to find many details of their past and longed for stories told in her parents' own words. She believes the Russian proverb that says, "You live as long as you are remembered." So as a mom, Melissa decided to do a better job building the bridge between generations for her children by documenting family stories to pass along to her future generations. She uses her talents as a teacher, counselor, writer, and coach to help others do the same. Her superpower? She sees stories everywhere. Her mission is to inspire and support others as they preserve their past through the power of their personal stories. So isn't that awesome? Melissa and I met in a chance in a Facebook group. We will talk about that more in our interview, and we have just really hit it off as friends. And I will say a year later, it feels like we've been friends forever. So without further ado, here's our interview and all about our story and how it might benefit you and your business.
Yay, we're here. Thank you everybody for joining us today on this celebration episode. We have so much to celebrate, and we are so grateful that you are here with us today to help us look at reflecting back on the past and celebrating how far we've come. We are here today celebrating 1-year anniversaries of both of these podcasts. So thank you for joining us.
Yes, I'm very excited for everybody.
We did it, Carrie.
Yes, super fun.
So in this episode, we did want to, Carrie and I have been reflecting back on the year and how much podcasting we've gone through, how much life has been lived in that. And in order to celebrate this, we did brainstorm some topics and some discussion points we wanted to go through together. We have not rehearsed this, so it will be fun to see how we reflect on each of the questions and support through that, how we've connected through this. So anything else, Carrie, for laying the groundwork of this episode you want to add to that?
I don't think so, other than I think it's going to help all the business owners out there and the people in your audience too, just really see how working together can really prepare yourself forward, whether it's in life or in business, and can really just help support you in everything you're doing.
Great point. Yes. So Carrie's we probably could talk a bit about each of our podcasts to get started with. So that if you are listening to my podcast, I will let Carrie introduce her podcast also. My podcast is the Preserve Your Past podcast, for those of you who are listening from Carrie's podcast. And we work through different ways to preserve your past through preserving stories in our life to pass along to the next generations. So my listeners may not be obviously thinking about search engine optimization or business and e-commerce, although many may. But I would invite my listeners to think of this also from the idea of how you can collaborate with others, create relationships. We're going to be sharing some great lessons on connection, on accountability, on supporting each other through this. And I see this project of doing the podcast, creating this content, the same as I do when I'm creating my stories and writing them down. And that can be overwhelming for both whenever you're doing a big project. So having someone that you can work through that with has been really super valuable to me. And I treasure our relationship, Carrie. Thank you. Because I could not have done this without you.
Thank you. I don't think I could have either, not quite so gracefully, at least. And then for those that are listening on Melissa's podcast who don't know me, I do the eCommerce Made Easy podcast, where we talk a lot about online business, not necessarily just e-commerce, but also mindset and how can you really propel yourself forward. And having Melissa with me and helping me do the podcast was really the catalyst I needed to getting this done. So having a good business bestie or partner or something like that, accountability partner that can really help you break through those tougher goals that are something completely brand new. And, and we can go back and look in the past, which relates to her show too, because we can look and see where we were a year ago and how excited we were, but scared at the same time. And, so I just feel like it all encompasses each other, everything.
Yeah, so we'll put a little alert out there. If you are listening live, you will be seeing lots of anniversary memories probably coming up on social media, because I've already started seeing pictures of my microphone and can't wait. It's coming soon.
Yes.
So to guide us to the next step, the first question that we brainstormed. So like I said, we have met only to come up with topics that we thought would be helpful to share and fun for us also, because that's what podcasting is also about. And having a friend to do it with makes that even more fun. Our first topic question is a little bit of a couple of items about looking at how we knew when we wanted to do a podcast. Was there a time, was there a moment? And then how we knew, how it came about, I guess, would be that overall arching question. Do you want to start with that, Carrie?
Sure. For me, wanting to do a podcast was itching at me for probably over a year. I love helping others. I love helping break down the tech for business owners. I love supporting them. I just love being helpful. I always have as a little kid and on. And so I just knew I wanted to do this to help more people, because I can only help so many people one-on-one in our business. And I wanted to be able to spread the love of my 20 some years knowledge in online tech even farther and really help other people. So I just knew that I wanted to do it. And then the date I picked was actually an anniversary date for our business. It was the first time I made an online sale to a stranger. was the date I picked, which was May 2nd, 2023. It was 2003 when I first made that stranger sale. So it was a 20-year
Wow,
later that
that's
I launched a
exciting.
podcast. So I wanted to make it an anniversary memorable, and I want to set in stone so that I didn't put it off anymore.
Beautiful.
What about you, Melissa?
So I have had the itch to be a talk show host since I was little. I used to, when you do projects for school, now this was also pre-internet because I'm older than the internet. When you'd have projects at school and you'd be able to come up with creative ways to present the material. I remember in a Spanish class doing an interview. And, that was even it might have been when Oprah was coming on light, but it might have even been pre-Oprah. But I just loved that format. I love helping people. I love learning people's stories, asking the questions. I'm like all about aha moments. So watching any kind of talk show to me and having those deep conversations, or, not so deep conversations, some of them, was always something that intrigued me. I never knew what my topic was going to be. And as I went through sharing my own stories and kind of doing the work that I was doing to preserve my stories and wrote my book, it became apparent that it was more than just a book. It was going to be about how cool it'd be to talk to other people about how they preserve their past, or all the things that have to do with nostalgia and family, ancestry, genealogy, or storytelling, any of that. So it's really evolved. And I was in the planning stages a couple of years ago on a bit of a different topic, took some classes. We have the same mentor teacher. We're going to do a shout out to Crystal Profit today too, because she really could be part of this with us as the other third person that helped us do it, because that's actually how we met. We'll talk about that in a moment. I'm kind of leaning into that. But I don't know if I would have done it so soon if we hadn't met in that group and you hadn't had posted when you knew you wanted to do this anniversary date. This is when I'm doing it. This is why I'm doing it. And so how we met basically is in that chat, right?
Right.
Me saying, me too, like, I want to join you. So it kind of leads to, I knew I wanted to do a podcast. I had taken the classes, I had gotten the material, I had all of the equipment, learned how to do it, actually did an intro and everything for a whole different topic, kind of put it to the side for a couple of years, and was having that itch again. And when you had posted that, that really spoke to me, as I was on that timeline. It was doable. And one of my big goals for that year of January of 2023, when we started this, was finding my besties, my business besties. You use that term, but finding my support team. So I think when we met, that was something that I knew if I had the right person to do this with, that I do well with external structures and people.
Right.
Any things that you remember from that time too, of
The,
going into that, how we met?
and I think it was just like an instinct thing where you said me too. And I was like, well, let's do this together. And then that's how we like really just kind of connected in Messenger on Facebook. Is like, my gut told me I'm doing it with this person, even though I didn't know you at all. And
I
we've
know.
since, I feel like, become best friends. It's almost like
Yeah.
we've
Oh,
been childhood
definitely.
friends, right? So
It's true.
it's been wonderful. So I think that's one of the things people listening can take with them too, is like really going with your gut is super important, whether it tells you to do something or not to do something. Talk about this a lot. Your gut's most of the time right. I'd say at least
Yep.
90%, if not more.
Yep. So that's applicable no matter where you are. Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I knew in my gut, seeking support is another thing, no matter which topic we're talking about, was super helpful. Getting to know the person, like, that was another, it was funny because yes, the gut and the instinct of connecting at that moment, the timing seemed right, and then the person was right. And for those of you who don't know, like Carrie and I have connected on so many similarities. It is insane, but we are both band moms of boys.
Yes.
And we have a lot that we can't even go into in the whole thing, but we have connected. And I think through the podcast structure, we have supported each other probably even more so through life, through everything, right? Through family items, through illnesses, through struggles, just being a human being in a human world, and the overwhelm you feel when you do have a goal that you're passionate about, but life starts getting in the way. And so I think that anyone could take that into account of those times when you knew you had a goal that you wanted to accomplish, but there was things in life that kept making it feel like it was impossible, or you were just it would be easier to give up.
Right.
But I thank you for the times that you helped me give myself some permission to have the space, but also not give up. Sometimes I'm like, that's it. I'm drawing the line. It's harder for me to see sometimes that there can be an and.
Yes. And it's nice to have the other person's perspective, because you've got somebody looking outside in towards the other person, and you can give them a little bit more different perspective. And I feel like we've both done that for each other whenever we either had health issues getting in the way, or just mindset issues getting in the way of getting things accomplished. We've really been like, I understand and give you grace, but how about this angle? Maybe we should look at it this way, or maybe we need to pull back some and work on this problem a different way. I just feel like we've both done a really good job of helping each other there.
For sure. And when you, for anyone listening too, have friends that have other talents or even overlap in talents, because I think the things that Carrie works through are things I'm interested in and have some knowledge about, but don't have the expertise. We're able to also see things from that other person's perspective, but also help hold space. And I know that's like a very vague term. Sometimes you hear that a lot and you're like, what does that even mean? But we have a history now. So if we've said something in the past that's important to us, we will hold that for the person when they're going through that tough time and they forget that's an important thing to them, because you've done that. You've helped me with that too, where again, where I've gone through something and I get too busy in the minutia to remember the bigger why that happened in the past, or something I said that was a value that you can then see and remind me of, or even look at from the outside. I know even when we were working on your copy, there were times like when you talk about yourself or write about yourself or do those things that it just, you can't even see what it all means until someone has a second set of eyes. So, I mean, that happens in life too, right?
Right, for sure.
So that's great. Excellent. The benefits. So I think that kind of led into our next topic, which was benefits of having an accountability partner. I can't think of if there are more or any kind of specific ones we haven't mentioned.
Well, one thing I would say that really worked for us is we weren't super formal and strict about it. And I feel like that holds people back sometimes, and feels like, oh, I have to meet with this person on this certain time, and I have to like be prepared and all these things. For Melissa and I, we decided for the most part to really just connect in Messenger. So then we would message each other when we could. And if the other person didn't respond for 6 hours, 12 hours, a whole day or so, we didn't get like worried or offended. Now we might, check back in a couple of days and be like, hey, want to make sure you got the message. But, we just kept ourselves really open to the fact that we each had our own different and busy schedules. And I think it was months before we even like talked to each other on
Talked on it.
Zoom, I
Yeah.
think, right?
I think it
So,
was at least a
yeah.
month and a half. It was because we were really nose to the grindstone in the beginning. So even finding the time, I think, was after. Those messenger conversations were amazing. Sometimes it would even be driving to work, having a epiphany and doing a voice message of, I'm driving, I can't talk right now, but I just had this epiphany and I wanted to share it with you as a placeholder for our discussion. I think that's important. I have tried, and I have been part of other accountability groups that met like at Tuesday at 7 in the morning, whatever, at different times. Working full time for me, that was always been a challenge. And that idea that you're on that schedule, committed to that schedule, can feel overwhelming, where I feel like having you more as a partner instead of a bigger group also plays into some allowance of flexibility. And then the way we did it worked really well for me. We were always able to put in our thoughts when we were having them too, which I think is different than waiting till your one meeting to then discuss them.
Yeah, I agree.
But the calls definitely, where there was certain times that I felt like, Carrie, can we please get on a Zoom? I need a person's face and I need to let this out. And sometimes when you're going through, whether it's a creative thing or a personal thing, there are sometimes like face-to-face conversation helps. And I love that we've been able to do that too.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think people listening, like if you're thinking of an accountability partner, think outside the box, because like we're saying, it doesn't have to be super structured. It's worked so, I mean, you even said it's just wonderful to get something off your chest when it's on your mind and you can just message a person and you know that they're not expected to respond and they know they're not expected to respond right away. And they'll get back to you when they're ready to be thoughtful about their response. And it's just been wonderful to have somebody I'm really comfortable with doing that.
And as we've grown with each other, it's definitely developed into even that trust you mentioned. Having that trust means that you can then even entrust other things that might, and when we're talking about mindset, especially for you and business, there will be personal things that will creep into that mindset. And so having an accountability partner, whether how talented or not they are in the topic, in business, or whether it's, for the people working on their stories and projects, that's great if people are well-versed in the subject matter, but it's also that trust that you can work through the mindset and that the person has a mindset you aspire to. I know they talk a lot in personal growth about the people you surround yourself with. I think it's like the 5 people or the 7 people that you surround yourself with are who you're going to be. And it's so true that if you are around people all the time that are focusing on the negative or the things that are in front of you, that are blocking you, that you could start believing in that. And both of us have taken turns at being the stronger reminding, because we both have been through challenges that other people would be like, wow, that's kind of crazy. And we won't get into that today, but we've both have an exercise in being able to work through our feelings, honor our feelings, face our feelings, but then get through to what's the important thing we are trying to get to on the other side, and help each other kind of work through that. That's an important piece to an accountability partner, would be someone that has that not toxic positivity, but the reality of being comfortable with the feelings and helping reframe and give, guidance on getting through those hard parts.
Yeah, definitely for realistic positivity, I would say probably is a good way to think of it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Excellent. And I'm trying to think of, like, as my people are working through accountability partners, places you could find them. If you're interested in writing stories or you're working on preserving it, there's so many associations. There's genealogy associations that are local. I've met amazing people through that. If you're looking for people that are like-minded, even checking in my Facebook group or on my Facebook page, you could even message me. I have people doing probably similar things to what you're doing, but could totally introduce people. If you are listening and this is something, I know we haven't even gotten to the end of this, but it just popped in my head, like, as we talk about the benefits of having an accountability partner, but where you would even find that for my
Mhm.
audience. I don't know if you have thoughts for your audience too.
I would say probably similar, just, business groups around. And then in my free Facebook group, we've got businesses of all types in there that vary very greatly. And, you can reach out to me. I kind of have a general idea of what everybody does. If you want to help you find a partner, you can also post in my group, looking for an accountability partner to help me with X. And I'm sure people will jump in and be ready to help.
And all the links of everything we're mentioning too, we will have in show notes for both places where this podcast will be hosted.
Mhm.
Okay. Now we're going to get into specifics. This one, I should have thought about this better ahead of time. But one of the things we wanted to share as a behind the scenes was a specific time where the other person helped you. So like when a specific time that you assisted me and a specific time that I helped you. And I kind of
Ooh.
talked about a couple of different like big things, but I'm trying to think of more specifics.
Well, one thing I
And
can think of is like right in the beginning, we were we were telling each other, the other person, the goal for that week, and then we would check in at the end of the week. So I just felt like that rhythm was really great in helping us keep moving forward. And I also didn't feel judged if I was behind, because running a full-time business and trying to start up a podcast for the business was a lot of extra time. So I didn't feel like judged, or, like we said before, we gave each other grace when needed.
mhm,
But we encouraged each other, oh, okay, well, you got this far. Let's finish getting there, So I
mhm,
feel like really in the beginning was where it really helped in um, helping me write the description, because I know all the stuff in my brain and the technical terms in my head, but I want to make sure it's in layman terms, because my goal is to help others who aren't as techy as I am.
mhm,
And so Melissa provided some really good perspective and feedback from a non super techie person. I would call you,
mhm.
you are
Yeah.
some techie,
Yeah.
you got techie
Yeah.
there, but not like super duper techie. So like it
Yeah.
was wonderful to see a nice another perspective on that. So I feel
Yeah.
like that's the first thing that came to my mind as far as where you really helped me a lot.
So when you say that, I think about the techie things you did help me with, because I have been doing online businesses of some sort, coaching and whatnot, since like 2009. So I've seen a range and evolution in technology, and I've always tried to do it myself. In the age where you could, right? 2009, I had someone create the website. It was all the HTML. It was much more back end. They did the setup, and I figured out how to get in and do my own changes and then test them and change. But I definitely remember needing, well, first of all, your knowledge and assistance going through some of the software and resources was super helpful. And as you would go through and find really cool things that helped with that, that weren't necessarily things that we learned through Crystal or through that environment, but maybe you tested them first or were able to use them first, you always shared them. The other time that I remember you helping me so much, and even your husband, was when I lost my episode. I had done a recording. It didn't save correctly. I went to try editing it, and it was like you guys were both online with me on an emergency tech call. And we did lose that recording, which actually turned out to be fine, because when I re-recorded, this is something else for people to remember that are creatives. Sometimes the second version of something turns out to be better than the first. And I did seriously had been stressed when I recorded that first version. It was a personal topic that was really hitting my heart. And I feel like the first version of it was my, not whiny, but more like from a victim, like, whoa, like, oh, this is the topic and this is it. And then the next time I did it, I had a whole different perspective and what my purpose was for my audience, not to hear me complain about or whine about whatever. And I really can't remember exact topic, but I do remember thinking, wow, what a better way to say it. That second time around. It didn't feel that way on a Sunday night at 9 o'clock when I was bothering you guys. Yeah, but it was nice to have you there, just even if you hadn't have had the knowledge you have, but to witness me kind of going through my, there's nothing worse than when you've created something and it's gone. But
Yeah. And I think I even said, maybe the second one will be better.
you did. And I went with the flow. And then by the time I went to bed that night and did it late. That's another thing, like that you talked about, giving grace and knowing, like, when in the beginning, when we weren't able to do things when we said we were going to do them, we were both recovering perfectionists, I think.
Hmm.
But when you're doing a podcast or some kind of creative project that others will be seeing or that others are relying on you for, or even as a mother creating anything you have where there's expectations, or at work when people are waiting for something on a certain time, it's really easy to dig into that perfectionism and think that if you don't have it on a time, every single time, and it doesn't look exactly the quality that you wanted, that it's a failure. And so having an accountability partner kind of bring you back to reality of what's the long-term goal, who's going to really notice that, even in real life, right? We do that to
Right.
ourselves in real life, and I do anyways. That's the recovering part. When you can start hearing those voices and say it to yourself, then you're getting better. But when you're tired, it's just, late, sometimes you lose the strength to do that for yourself.
For sure.
So that was great. Okay. And we've talked about one of the questions, when we realized we were becoming friends and supporting each other in life. And for me, it's when we started seeing the bits and pieces of the family piece overlapping, that we were becoming passionate in each other's topics, that we were meeting more authentically on our
Hmm.
Zooms too.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. The connections, sharing more personal things, and knowing starting to feel those similarities was really amazing. And then knowing that, like, look into the future, and that this wasn't just about the podcast, but it's like, when are we going to meet? What are we going to do? How are we going to,
Yeah. Yeah. We've even talked about meeting in person sometime soon. Hopefully this summer, maybe we can
Yes.
figure it out. Um,
Yes.
yeah, I just remember, the more we helped each other with business, the more personal crept in just naturally, because we would be like, oh, I got busy with this and this is why I'm a bit behind. It wasn't really like an excuse, but it was just kind of here's my story type of
Hmm.
thing. Right. And so I think that helped us see each other as a person more. And then the more we did that, we realized we have a lot of some very similar family dynamics sometimes back in there, and
Hmm.
it can really help us from a business perspective too. If we're talking about business as far as helping each other with the podcast, it can help us understand a bit more perspective and how to help the other person when you know a bit about the personal story. Not saying that you need to be super personal with all your accountability people, but you're going to
Hmm.
know when it's the right one that you can feel completely comfortable and trust. And I feel like that's where Melissa and I ended up. And we both have felt really comfortable opening up to all the personal things and realizing that it's almost like we're sisters from
Mm.
another life or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's so
Yeah. It
weird.
is weird. It's funny too. Um, when you start seeing it open up. I think it was good to note, though, not every accountability partner needs to be your best friend, nor will they be, and that doesn't mean they're not a good accountability partner. We
Mhm.
really did. This is, I think, like, you nailed it. It's kind of like one of those once in a lifetime kismet situations, which I do have other people that I've been blessed with put in my path to assist with my business. But definitely, um, it depends on, like, your shared values, your shared life, and yeah, the two-way street of the relationship, knowing when it's the right time to share those things, and having that person kind of switch over from just a purpose of that accountability to then becoming a friend. And I think the fact that we both were open to that, had time for that, and had the space, and it just, yeah, the similarities, the connection that we were able to have was pretty important. The more we got into sharing some of those things that I don't normally share with a lot of people, that's when I knew, ooh, this is changing. The other part was just going through a really tough winter with illnesses, and you kind of going through it very similar time. But yeah, being there, taking space to recover, and then coming back to. I appreciate also any time that you found something. This is kind of goes to the real friendship part and the trust part, is that we were never competitive. We didn't hold our secrets, not secrets, but our findings, our tools, our anything we discovered was shared right away. Like we both, people and groups, and having someone you can trust that can share resources or tips or tools, and you know them and they know you know it's coming from a good place. So I really appreciate that. Some of the groups that we've been in together were because they were on your podcast, or something that you have used yourself. And I think when you have a interdisciplinary kind of relationship too, we're not in the same space, so we do have a bit of a different thing that we're looking for, but we're building similarly because of the podcast and the way we want to reach people.
Yeah, I think you summed that up pretty good there.
Thank you. So I kind of even think that talked about outside benefits, outside of the podcast, that our friendship, our relationship, for me has helped with balancing. Well, I would say for me, the beginning of the year, even though it did not turn out the way I would have wanted it to, that Carrie and I have been working on a 12-week year plans together, which does not just take into account the podcast. We both are working on health goals, business goals, and personal goals. It turned out that due to different health things, we are similarly looking at, you shared with me different chips and things that are grain-free that I could use, because we're both looking at inflammation. And but like some of those fun personal things that we've shared along the way is definitely another benefit of outside of the podcast, being able to work on those goals, check in each week, and have the safety of not necessarily meeting each of those weekly things and shifting when we knew we were growing.
Right. And I haven't heard from Melissa in a couple of weeks. I better check in with her, just, it's just wonderful to have like somebody like that you're just in tune with, and then you can be like, oh, I should check on her because she hasn't, I want to make sure she's okay. And, Melissa's done the same thing for me. So it's just kind of nice to have like a business friend out there that's like got your back on personal and in business, just making sure you're doing okay. Sometimes you just need somebody to say, how are you doing today? Are you doing all right this week? Because sometimes it's hard for us to open up and say what's not going well, and it just helps.
Especially me. Sometimes when I go through that, I'll think of it as like, nobody wants to hear the tough part. Everybody's moving along. Nobody needs to hear that. And sometimes it just takes that person of showing, like, I know through some of those times, to look at it in a way that, well, how about just doing this little piece, or yes, it is really, yes, this is a big deal, and give yourself a time to rest. Or I could totally see it being just this one simple thing. So in talking about the podcast, looking at creating content weekly has been really overwhelming. We both have full-time jobs that we're doing. And so as we've supported each other through, what does that look like for each of us to then do the sharing of it, which is also a lot.
Hmm.
But it's been, yeah, I couldn't have done it without you. I do think
Yeah.
I would have not still be here today celebrating a year, even just within the last month or two has really been another challenge. But but I love what I'm doing. So not the challenge of the podcast, but just how it fits into life. Because I still love and am passionate about the topic.
Hmm. Yeah. And sometimes we just need to be told, it's okay to take a week off and take a break. You need it right now,
Hmm.
or, yeah, you need some time off, but I think you could do this one little thing. So sometimes it's like a little encouraging push, and sometimes it's just like, yes, you do need to take a break. And I feel like us as business owners, many times don't take the breaks we need. And I'm talking to myself here too.
Hmm. Hmm.
But we just need to be reminded of that. And having a partner like this can really help you be reminded when you need to take a break because they can see some of the outside things you don't see when you're experiencing them. And they
Hmm.
could see how stressed you are and be like, okay, your body's telling you need to take a break right now. Or
Hmm.
it can also see the perfectionist or the procrastinist in you and
Hmm.
be like, yeah, you're doing fine, but you need to do this one little thing. Just, keep moving a little bit, and you'll be
Hmm.
good. So
Hmm.
it's just
And
great to have somebody like that.
for sure. And even thinking about my listeners who might be working on writing their stories or gathering the stories, doing the interviews, or whatever the piece is that you're working on, projects can be start out with real enthusiasm. And then the consistent follow through sometimes can get overwhelming. And similarly to me writing the content for the podcast, the passion is there, but maybe you're thinking it has to be done a certain way or by a certain time. But having a group, which is why I love for writers anyhow, and I've done it myself, been a part of a writers group, even if we're not working on anything related, but it's just a container to hold space and accountability and have a schedule for doing that. So I think that's one of the pieces for the both of us that has kept us going is having that um, be there regardless as we work through whichever part of our project we're working on. I think anyone can use that. It brings to mind to me too, as we talk about this, first we were talking about, our accountability partners, and then we've really showed how it's turned into a friendship. And I think that a lot of people will admit that finding adult friendships, especially if you're working on projects and you're a creative person or an entrepreneur, like both of our people probably overlap. I'm really,
For
I
sure.
know some of my people that do because they're working on projects and they wanted to publish, and some of them are using online formats to share their stories. So I know that we're going to have a lot of people listening to both, but when we get so into our projects and our things and our family life and everything, sometimes it is hard to find adult friendships that feel real, or we grow out of other ones that don't know that. I think that's the biggest part that I could say is we got each other for this. Whereas I have wonderful friends outside of this. But for me to go to them and talk about, oh, I'm getting no views or nobody's, I'm not moving up the list. Nobody's gotten to the podcast or whatever it is. Having, you know, creating those friendships as an adult, that's I guess what I started with is to have that is a nice bonus.
It sure is.
So I appreciate you for that. Okay, so then the final part we kind of had mentioned was future support and friendship through future growth and changes. And so I think when we were talking about that, it was the idea that we've come this far. We'll both be celebrating if you're listening to this live, the first week in April, we will both be celebrating our year anniversary.
Well, actually, technically
And
May.
I mean, May. What did I say?
You said April.
Oh, yes. Sorry,
It's
it's
April
already
now.
April. It's only one day of April.
Yeah. Yeah, we're recording in April.
You will be listening to this. But that first week in May of 2024 will be our year anniversary. And so I don't see this ending. I know I have goals for my podcast. It will look a little bit different. Thanks to you, I was able to embrace some changes and be good with some changes. So, those of you who listen to the Preserve Your Past podcast, you might see some evolution in it. But I'm getting excited for some of those changes. And I know that through my relationship with Carrie too, that I will be braver to be able to do those changes and enjoy them. And yeah, any comments about the future?
Well, you may have just heard the cat meow. I don't know if you could hear that. The cat came into my office. Yes, I feel like for the future, I just feel that I know that I can bounce ideas off of you, especially as somebody doing like the tech stuff. Sometimes I wonder if like, am I repeating myself too much? Am I being too basic? Am I being too advanced? Like, and so having somebody like Melissa that can help, have a different perspective that understands what I'm going through as far as creating content goes, but as not me, and so she can help me see where I'm going and say, oh yeah, that's a great direction, or what about this? I'm curious about this. Why don't you talk about this? I just feel like we're gonna just help each other with that. And I'm wanting to release a course finally this year for our business, about helping your website convert better. And I feel like it's going to be really nice to bounce ideas off of Melissa, because she's just a great idea person, and I think she has a really good way to put words around things that I sometimes get stuck on. When I'm in the flow, I can definitely do the words, but sometimes my technical brain, like my gears crunch when I try to do too much creative stuff. So it's just wonderful to have somebody like Melissa that I can bounce things off of, and just it really kind of unlock my brain a bit more and stop being stuck.
I would also flip it too and go back to something you said at the beginning when you said why you started the podcast was to help people. Because the other piece to this is I have so much fun being that person for you, because I am excited about your content and I love seeing what you're going to be sharing. And it's, something that I know myself and I know others who will be passionate about. So I can see, and I know you and what your goal is. So it's like this nice sweet spot of this is your intention. And if we tweaked this as like a wordsmith, or if, I just question back, I think what you're meaning is this, that's so much fun to me to do. So
Mm-hmm.
like you helping me, that was the other piece, was like, here I am doing something very different, but it was a topic that was close to your heart that you were excited about also. So that when I'm trying to stay focused or to expand or to brainstorm ideas, that's you've always been there for me also, and not looked at the topic as not being a business topic. Some people in your in the business world might be looking at it. I don't know anyone who would, but I mean, you get the flexibility of it being a softer topic that's not necessarily for entrepreneurs. A lot of the groups that we're in, people have businesses that are focused towards other entrepreneurs. And so I
Mm-hmm.
appreciate you seeing the difference there and helping me bridge the difference, because a lot of my examples have always been businesses that are for other solopreneurs or business people. And so doing this to an audience that's outside of that, but is us, right, has been
Mm-hmm.
helpful to have you also be able to reflect that.
Yeah. And I love helping you with your topics, because with some of my family background stuff, there's a lot of things I do remember from childhood and a lot of things I don't. And it's just, trying to think about, well, how would I want to preserve this information so that I can remember it later and so my kids can have it and things like that. So it's just, I love thinking outside the box and helping you with your stuff too. It's been very fun and enjoyable for me.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I think that we've then kind of come full circle on the discussion. Anything that you would like to add, Carrie?
But that's all I can think of.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we have gone through how we met. Well, first we went through why a podcast and how we started, how we met. We've looked at benefits of accountability, how we've each been there for each other and helped each other. I think we even were able to delineate that between personal and professional. I think we definitely showed how, regardless of whether you are a small business owner, an entrepreneur, or a person who is preserving their past, writing stories, or collecting those details for family, that we've shown pretty clearly how a relationship with an important person that can be your accountability partner and a friend can help so much.
So very much.
So very much. And I really appreciate you. And I love you, my dear friend.
I appreciate you too.
And one
Melissa.
goal we do have is an in-person meetup.
Yes, for sure. So stay tuned, everybody. We will let you know.
You will be able to, and actually that will be something fun to do too. We'll have to share some more. If you want to see more of this relationship, maybe that can be one of our goals, is to put more of that into things that people can watch on our channels for our podcasts.
Yes.
More
that'd
of
be a
the
good idea.
Carrie Melissa. We could even
Yes.
reflect more often. But anyways, thank you, Carrie, for doing this and for being my friend. Thank you to everyone out there from podcast land.
Yes. Thank you, Melissa. And thank you to everybody listening to us. We appreciate you. All right. So wasn't that a ton of fun? I just absolutely love talking to Melissa, whether it's just chatting on Facebook Messenger or actually kind of in person via Zoom, if we want to call that in person. So as we wrap up the special anniversary episode, I want to say thanks to each and every one of our listeners. Without your support over the past year, it wouldn't be where it is today, and it has meant the world to me, and I couldn't have reached this milestone without you. Before I sign off, I want to leave you with a thought. If there's one thing in my journey has taught me, it's the power of accountability. Whether you're an entrepreneur, a student, or anyone striving towards a goal, having someone by your side can make all the difference. So as you continue to grow on your own path, consider seeking an accountability partner. You never know just how far you can go when you have someone cheering you on. So as usual, be sure to visit our show notes and other show notes episodes on our eCommerce Made Easy podcast.com website. And if you're watching this on the YouTube channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button. And if you're listening on the podcast, hit that follow button wherever you're listening. If you're loving my eCommerce Made Easy podcast, I'd be thrilled if you could rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts. Your ratings and reviews help me reach more listeners and empower more people like you to thrive in the online business world. Thank you again for listening, and we will see you next week.